History recalls only what those in power allow, and when the truth shines too brightly, it gets buried. Not because it's false, but because it's dangerously real. Beneath centuries of silence lies a forbidden story, a lineage whispered through symbols, myths, and coded texts. This bloodline is not one of royalty as commonly known, but of a sacred union that threatened empires and reshaped humanity's spiritual DNA. Mary Magdalene was not erased because she was insignificant. She was erased because she was central to a forgotten stream of divine wisdom, central to the dragon lineage, a sacred bloodline that carried not only genes, but vibrations, memories, and revelations. Her truth could not be controlled, and her presence challenged a system built on obedience, hierarchy, and fear. This story isn't just about ancient manuscripts or medieval legends. It's about you, why the sacred feminine was silenced, why spiritual sovereignty was feared, and why traces of that bloodline still survive today, not only in rare families or secret traditions, but in the awakening pulse of those ready to remember. You were never meant to discover this truth. But now that you have, the question isn't whether it's real. The question is, what part of you is already connected to it? For centuries, Mary Magdalene was pushed to the margins of Christian history, misunderstood, distorted, and diminished by time and doctrine. Labeled a repentant sinner, she was reduced to a mere footnote in Jesus' story, as if her presence were incidental rather than essential. But if you look beyond the surface, reading between the lines of canonical texts and exploring the suppressed voices of Gnostic writings, a different Mary emerges, not a fallen woman saved by grace, but a teacher of profound wisdom, a spiritual equal, an initiate of powerful mysteries excluded from the sanitized narrative of institutional religion. In texts like the Gospel of Mary and the Pistis Sophia, her voice is clear, confident, and catalytic. She comforts the apostles, questions outdated teachings, and offers insights beyond mere moral lessons, insights filled with spiritual intelligence. She seeks no validation, needs no permission, and that is exactly why she threatened the early church structure, which aligned more with empire than with true spiritual essence. Spiritual autonomy, the ability to access the divine without hierarchy or mediation, is the greatest threat to any system built on control. Mary Magdalene embodied this truth. Think about your own life. How many times have you felt a deep knowing within you, a truth your mind couldn't explain but your soul recognized as real? How often have you silenced your intuition because it didn't fit the framework you were taught to trust? This inner voice is what Magdalene represents. It is not bound by books, dogma, or institutions. It is the quiet knowing that arises from the stillness within you. A sacred intelligence living in your body, your dreams, your heart. It requires no approval, only remembrance. This is not romanticism or wishful mysticism. Historical and archaeological evidence shows that in early Christianity, women held leadership and spiritual authority. Texts were altered, excluded, or destroyed to erase this truth because it threatened the emerging orthodoxy. Scholars like John Lalloupe, in their study of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, reveal how her voice was not an exception, but foundational to the original movement. A movement meant not to become a religion, but a path to direct sacred experience. Magdalene brings forth the sacred feminine, not as opposition to the masculine, but as its necessary complement. She is not a symbol of sin, but the embodiment of intuitive wisdom, inner light, and spiritual sovereignty. She is what arises in you when you trust your silence, sensitivity, and truth. That's exactly why she was buried under centuries of shame and misrepresentation, because she reminds us of a power that doesn't bow to thrones or creeds, but listens inward and walks with quiet strength. But there is more than wisdom and grace. Beneath the veil of history lies a deeper inheritance, an ancient lineage encrypted in symbols and protected through secrecy. This is no metaphor or fantasy. It's a thread woven through mystical traditions across cultures, linking Magdalene to something sacred and alive, something once known, feared, and deliberately hidden. The question is not whether it is real, but why it was silenced, and what happens to us in our world when we begin to remember it. Most people think of dragons as winged beasts breathing fire over villages. But to ancient minds, the dragon was never a beast to be conquered. It was a living symbol of awakened power. In Egypt, the serpent dragon coiled through temple walls as the royal protector. In Mesopotamia, it wrapped around the tree of life as a symbol of cosmic ascent. Celtic bards sang of the Pendragon, the head of a sacred bloodline bridging heaven and earth. Everywhere, this motif conveyed the same message. Within the spiral of evolution lies a pulse of consciousness, hot enough to break the limits of the human story. This pulse is what mystics later called the dragon lineage. It's not about thrones or family crests, but about souls carrying the fire of direct revelation in their bones. They are priests and healers who move between worlds, poets who speak in symbols, dreamers who remember lost civilizations without textbooks. They inherit no castles, only initiation. They trade no currency, only vibration. When they meet you, you feel it, like standing beside a tuning fork that sets your nervous system ringing in a forgotten key. Mary Magdalene and Yeshua shared more than affection. Their union was a deliberate act of alchemy. Imagine two streams of luminous code merging into one current, embedding new possibilities into humanity's timeline. Some legends say they had children. Others claim the offspring was spiritual. Either way, the seed was planted. A spark of soul DNA released into history, quietly awaiting resonance. Every time you feel drawn to an ancient labyrinth, a black Madonna icon, or the coiled dragons on a Tibetan thangka, the signal is pinging again. I am here, Wake up. Genetics alone can't explain this magnetic frequency. Like a radio dial, it finds a station already playing the dragon lineage, broadcasting on a wavelength tuned to courage, curiosity, and inner silence. If you've ever entered an ancient stone circle and felt the air thick with memory, or cracked open the Sophia Code and felt your skin ripple with recognition, you've brushed against this frequency. It doesn't demand perfection. It invites presence. Try sitting in stillness for 10 minutes, one hand on your heart, the other on your belly. Just breathe until the mind quiets. Notice how a deeper current rises, wordless but unmistakable. That is the dragon awakening. Modern life teaches us to dismiss these feelings as fantasy. But the real question is, who benefits when you silence your mystical instincts? Empires have thrived by outsourcing spiritual authority, convincing seekers that the path is too dangerous to walk alone. The dragon lineage breaks that system. It offers direct access, no priests, no temple fees, no approvals needed. No wonder scribes cast the dragon as a demon and Magdalene as a sinner. The danger was never that the lineage didn't exist. The danger was that it did, and ordinary people might realize they carry its ember. You know this ember by its restlessness. It flares when you meditate near running water, when a stranger's story breaks your heart open, or when a dream leaves the taste of stars on your tongue. It whispers that the world is far more enchanted than the headlines admit. When the whisper comes, answer it. Visit a labyrinth, chant a vowel for minutes, read a page of the Pistis Sophia, or draw the Ouroboros, circling itself. Each act is a password unlocking more of the code. So when skeptics laugh and call the dragon lineage folklore, let them laugh. Myth has always been the vault where civilizations hide their most subversive truths. As we ask, who tried to bury this vault? Burning texts, silencing voices, hunting mystics. You'll see just how high the stakes were, and why the guardians of power feared a woman whose very presence made the hidden fire impossible to contain. Why would anyone want to erase a lineage of love, wisdom, and inner power? Because this lineage was never about religion. It was about freedom, the inner kind that cannot be reversed. Freedom, the kind of freedom that requires no permission, does not bow to empires, cannot be bought or controlled. That's exactly why it was seen as dangerous. Dangerous not because it aimed to destroy, but because it awakened. No empire can endure for long when its people begin to awaken. When institutional Christianity merged with the Roman Empire's power, something ancient and untamed was tamed. What had once been a mystical journey became an imperial agenda. The flame of direct revelation was smothered beneath layers of doctrine. The kingdom within, spoken of by Yeshua, was replaced by an external kingdom ruled by bishops, enforced by soldiers, and dictated by councils. Mystery gave way to control. The sacred feminine was silenced, not by accident, but by design. Mary Magdalene, once revered in secret circles as a high initiate, a teacher of inner mysteries, and the sacred counterpart to Christ, was not forgotten. She was rewritten, diminished, and muted. She was turned into a repentant sinner, a former prostitute in need of forgiveness, rather than acknowledged as a spiritual master in her own right. This was not merely character assassination. It was a strategic symbol, a deliberate effort to neutralize the divine feminine and disrupt the spiritual balance between masculine and feminine energies that once existed in harmony. It was not just the erasure of a woman. It was the erasure of an entire current of consciousness, a lineage, a secret thread weaving through early mysticism, Gnostic teachings, the Essenes, and temple mysteries. A thread that proclaimed, "You are divine, you are sovereign, you can know God without fear, without priests, without stone temples. You carry the light." And that truth, this truth, could dismantle the towers of power built on fear. So the suppression began. Gospels were hidden, teachings labeled heresy. The Gospel of Mary, in which she holds secret wisdom from Christ, vanished into the sands of Egypt, only to be rediscovered nearly 2 millennia later. The Cathars of southern France, who echoed her teachings and devoted themselves to the sacred feminine, were slaughtered in a holy genocide. Entire lineages were hunted, not for what they did, but for what they remembered. Ask yourself, why would institutions go to such extremes to silence a myth? Myths don't need to be burned. Only truths do. Only truths that can liberate. Only teachings that hold keys. The dragon lineage was one such key. Not a bloodline in the literal sense, but a spiritual inheritance, a current, a frequency. It held the mysteries of divine union, sacred sexuality, and inner transformation. It understood that the body was not a prison, but a temple, that the feminine was not subordinate, but co-creative, and that Christ was not a king, but a code, a state of awakened being. Magdalene embodied and transmitted that code. That is what made her dangerous, not her closeness to Yeshua, but her power to reveal his true teachings. The alchemy of inner union, the remembrance of our original light, the sacred marriage of spirit and flesh, heaven and earth, masculine and feminine. She was not just a follower, she was a portal, and portals must be guarded, hidden, or destroyed if the world isn't ready. So the lineage was erased, but never entirely. What is real leaves traces, echoes in stones, vibrations in the dreams of mystics, patterns in ancient symbols, and longing in hearts that sense there is more than the official story. Even in silence, something endured, a frequency that could not be extinguished. A call. Now that call grows louder. We live in a time when veils are lifting, and what was buried is rising, not as belief, but as memory. Magdalene is not returning. She never left. She awakens within those brave enough to see with new eyes, to feel beyond dogma, to reclaim the sacred feminine within themselves. This is not about religion. It's about remembering. So I ask you, not as a historian, but as a mirror, what if everything they tried to erase lives within you? And what if your remembering is exactly what they feared? The dragon lineage was never about blood. It's about light. And light, no matter how long it is hidden, always finds its way through the cracks. Will you follow it? You can burn books, but you cannot burn truth. You can shatter temples, silence prophets, rewrite scrolls, but true truth does not die. It hides, waits, weaves itself into dreams, symbols, and the pulse of those who remember without knowing why. While flames consumed sacred texts and swords spilled blood, the lineage did not vanish. It went underground. It became a whisper, a symbol, a sacred frequency passed not through bloodlines, but through soul recognition. It lived not in cathedrals or crowns, but in caves, chants, and the eyes of those who knew the divine cannot be caged. In the forests of southern France, the Cathars carried this silent light. They spoke not of sin and punishment, but of Sophia, holy wisdom incarnate. They honored Mary Magdalene not as fallen, but as divine gnosis, the sacred counterpart to Christ. To them, she was the Grail, not a cup to be found, but a mystery to awaken, a vessel of divine remembrance, the womb not only of life, but of truth. They died for that truth, not because it was false, but because it threatened a world built on forgetting. For the Cathars, the Grail was a living code, a teaching hidden in plain sight, a key to a sacred lineage, a current of divine feminine power Magdalene carried, not just in blood, but in being, a power not meant to dominate, but to remember, a vibration so potent it became dangerous to rulers who thrived on fear, because the true Grail, once remembered, made kings irrelevant and cathedrals obsolete. It called people back to the divine within. The Templars knew this too. Behind their armor and banners, beyond wars fought in God's name, was a secret order that bowed not to conquest, but to the ancient mother, the Black Madonna, the sacred feminine cloaked in mystery and shadow. Their treasures were not gold, but maps of inner alchemy, the keys to divine union beyond flesh. They were keepers of the flame, not of war, but of remembrance. They guarded a truth that could never be placed on an altar. The Grail is not a relic, but a knowing. Divine union is not myth, but blueprint. A time when masculine and feminine walked as equals, mirrors of one another, co-creators of a balanced world. For this, they too were betrayed, hunted, and destroyed by fire and politics. But like the Cathars, they left more than ashes. Legends spread of secret bloodlines, royal families touched by something otherworldly, the Merovingians, said to descend from Magdalene and Yeshua's sacred union. Whether fact or metaphor, the meaning remains. Humanity once held a template of divine balance, and it can be awakened again. Christ was not a man, but a frequency. Magdalene was no mistake. She was the key. The blue blood of so-called royal lines was never about politics or power. It was symbolic, a whisper that beneath the flesh lies light, that some carry the memory of the original flame, not because they are chosen, but because they chose to remember, and that remembering is open to all. This hidden current is the Grail. It lives not in royal veins, but in hearts that feel the tremor of something sacred stirring beneath the world's surface. The Guardians were never protecting religion. They protected a vibration, a state of being, a secret not to be owned, but lived. The Cathars, Templars, Gnostics, mystics, they were bridges between the seen and unseen, heaven and earth. Though many fell, the current never stopped flowing. Spiritual DNA needs not temples, but consciousness. And now the call returns, not to go backward, but to bring memory forward, to reclaim what was hidden, not with swords, but with sight. The Grail was never under stone or buried in crypts. It lives wherever a soul dares to remember its divine origin. It lives in you. You don't need to find the Grail. You are the Grail. You are the vessel, the remembrance, the sacred space where divine feminine and conscious masculine meet to create anew. The lineage is not a royal family. It is a frequency waiting to awaken in every soul brave enough to claim it. The time has come, not to search, but to remember, not to follow, but to become. The Grail is not lost. It has been waiting for you.